Well, we're early September, and the vote's going to take place in November for these ordinances. Votes for the ordinances, what is this about?
It's horrible. It's pitting the private property owners in Josephine County against the full force of our local government, our county government. In my opinion, this is a very, very bad thing to do. It's not going to help the general attitude of people in this area.
But ordinances generally are a good thing. When I read through the basic ordinances, we'd like to keep the community clean. They're against rats. There's no representation for rats, apparently. Oh, no, yes, there is. And, well, that's a whole different kind of story. And they would like to keep things clean and neat and orderly and etc. And so people might say, well, what's wrong with all that?
Well, you know, for the public safety and everything, we do have an ordinance. It's called Ordinance 9016. It was passed way back in 1990, and it's been in effect all this time for years and years and years. And if there are solid waste issues, there is a procedure in there where the county can, you know, issue notices and then come before a hearings officer, and it states, or the Board of County Commissioners. And that's generally how it has been for all these years, since 1990.
Now, this doesn't apply to someone that just drives in their car and goes to the restaurant or whatever. This applies to people who are property owners.
Yes, primarily property owners, but, you know, I'm not too sure the question's about getting in your car.
No, I mean just regular people driving around. I live in an apartment.
Right.
This isn't going to really affect me. This is for people who are property owners that might want to put a sign saying, you know, no trespassing or something like that. I mean, this is primarily something for people who own property.
Yes, or businesses. You know, it could be restaurants who have business license. You have to have a business license. Angela's restaurant was a recent case that they had where they brought them to civil court and fined them $10,000.
$10,000?
Yeah, because they didn't have a $600 business license.
Wait. They didn't have a $600 license. And their fine ended up being $10,000?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
That sounds like a little bit of overkill.
In my opinion, it was. And they've been in the valley having an open restaurant for years. It was like, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. So they've been a long-established business. And because they did not have a voter's pamphlet starting January 1st, the county went after them.
Because they didn't have a voter's pamphlet?
Oh, no, they didn't have, is that what I said?
Yeah.
They didn't have, sorry, not a voter's pamphlet. Got voter's pamphlet on my mind. They didn't have a business license. So,
wait, I'm sorry. This business has been in business for 20 years?
Yeah,
a
long time.
And government is your friend, right?
Yeah, right.
Woohoo! And so government said, listen, you haven't gotten a business license, and probably the people, only this year, and the people probably were low on money or whatever, and they not only stopped their business, but they fined them $10,000 for a $600 license.
Well, I think that's what the write-up was in the
Not So
Courier.
Daily Courier?
Yeah, Not So Daily Courier. It was very exorbitant, and, you know, Dennis Roller did an editorial saying how wonderful it will be for these 4 ordinances to go in effect because, you know, whoopee, you know, it will be a lot faster, you know, to get all this stuff cleaned up. Well, why did they wait months in order to bring it to court while this person's, you know, this business is on the clock being fined per day?
I would rather see them put the full force of the law behind prosecuting meth and heroin dealers than someone that owns a restaurant,
right,
and has been here for 20 years.
Yeah, you know, it really. It's really...
Is this where these ordinances are going, that we're going to end up having rules and regulations that are only good for a certain class of people and everyone else need not apply?
Well, I don't know about that, but it definitely will be burdensome. Jackson County found out their residents about how horrible this type of ordinance is.
Well, give me an example, please, of one thing that I know you're ready to tell everybody every detail, and that's good.
Right.
But one thing where they can say, "Oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to listen to the rest of this because that sounds really terrible." Give me an example of one thing that's outrageous. I have one if you don't.
Well, give me one. Give me your
Okay.
one. We'll get
One
to
of the
mine.
things that's outrageous is the way they wrote this up. They said, now we've studied this carefully and we've had our legal counsel go through all these ordinances. We are telling you that this is going to be good for you. It's all right, and we're putting the full force of our Board of County Commissioners behind it. And then somebody brings up, well, now wait a minute. One of these says, just one little part, it says that when the fines are applied, that the fine from these new ordinances will go back to the department that wrote it. What? No. No, what does it say? So how carefully could they have, they were really embarrassed. Mm-hmm. How carefully could they have read through this? And what is legal counsel doing on letting something like that through? And that's the thing they tried to pass. Look, tell me.
But they did pass it. Cheryl Walker and Keith Heck passed these 4 ordinances.
Yeah, and what does that mean? It was passed, it wasn't passed, it was put on abeyance, it was put on a hold. What's that?
Well, in February, I believe it was, they had the first and the second readings, I think it was in March, for these 4 ordinances. And Cheryl Walker's been complaining lately that says, well, we were only in office 2 months, when this was plopped on our table. And first of all, you don't pass things that you don't understand. I mean, that's the first general rule.
This is a good rule, yes.
Commissioners, you have to read the document and you have to know what every sentence says. Take the time and thoroughly investigate and read all this stuff. I don't think they did their due diligence when they passed these. And they were approved in April. Simon kind of reversed himself and says, no, we really shouldn't be doing this. And he says it's going to cost the money, cost the county a lot of money if we pass these, and there's been rumors that the people will put it as a referendum.
They were guaranteed that this would happen.
Yeah.
And he told the other 2 commissioners, if you proceed with this, it's going to go to a citizen's petition, and they're going to put it on the ballot, and then we'll have to spend all that money. And the other 2 said, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Against strong objections during the hearings.
There wasn't a single person who stood up during those hearings and said, what a great, except for government employees, well, especially like the department that would get the money, but, we're still going to do it no matter what. Really?
Yeah. Even Simon warned Commissioners Heck and Walker that this would cost the county a lot of money if the referendum went through, and it had to be placed on the November ballot. And they went ahead and they did it anyways.
So their idea of saying, oh, well, this is so expensive, they knew it ahead of time. He blows hot and cold in this thing. But he did tell them, and the citizens told them, and they don't care.
Yeah. So they passed, Cheryl Walker and Keith Heck, the majority of the board, passed these 4 ordinances. It's for solid waste, for code enforcement officers, for hearings officers, a whole procedure for that, and for the county being able to enact state laws regarding, DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, and stuff like that.
Now, Cheryl comes from a state legislature background, and also Cheryl Walker has been an enforcement officer, a hearings officer, and she went into great detail about how she doesn't approve of her neighbor to where she lives who has stuff on his property, and she doesn't like it. This led a number of people to say, well, wouldn't it just be easier if we just pass a law against Cheryl's neighbor, and then none of the rest of us will have to pay this bill?
Yeah, well, she said that was a classic example. But the thing is, like I said, there was strong objections to these. I believe the majority of the people do not want this, and it's mostly for the county residents, is in the order. It says areas within the incorporated limits of any city, unless that city enters into an intergovernmental agreement with the county for solid waste and nuisance abatement services under this ordinances.
Now, I brought up a killer point a moment ago, which is about the money going to the department, and of course they're saying, oh, well, we can fix that. Yeah, thanks. I don't like it when government passes something and says we can fix it. And I also don't like the fact that they didn't read through this. We have paid people. We've got an entire legal staff who went through this and they didn't see that. Why is it that the citizens are finding this and bringing it to their attention? You did a killer job on that. Another killer point on this is...
wait a minute. Before we leave that, let me just say in the explanatory notes, it says the ordinance does not apply to property located within the cities of Grants Pass and Cape Junction.
So why are they getting to vote on this?
Yeah.
I live in the city. Why am I voting on something that's going to affect you out in the county? What if it doesn't apply to me? Why not just have someone in South Dakota vote on this?
Yeah.
Why are they getting the chance? Cave Junction's not part of this deal. They're not. They're part of the county. Well, they're not part of this deal. So why does anyone in Cave, I mean, nothing against Cave Junction, but why does anybody in Cave Junction or Grants Pass get to vote on something that doesn't affect them and only affects other people?
Yeah.
What's this?
Yeah.
That doesn't, well, I'll tell you the reason, because this couldn't pass unless people in Grants Pass were voting for it because they're used to trusting their government. Apparently so.
Kind of on a similar vein, for the ordinance,
Well, that stinks.
the hearings officer ordinance, it says the Board of County Commissioners will adopt a policy that states which types of violations the hearing officer will review. They haven't even determined which types of violations the hearings officer is going to review. So, how much, how invasive this is going to be and what their authority is going to be, we still don't know.
Well, just give us the authority. We'll figure out later how to use it.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's related, but it is, I promise. A number of people have said to me over the years, well, if we only had 5 commissioners or 7 or 9 commissioners instead of just 3, look, it doesn't matter whether you've got 19 commissioners. It all depends on who they are.
Yep.
And if you've got 3 commissioners that want you to hand the power over to them but will never use it, no, this is a bad start.
But this doesn't even hand the power over to the BCC. This
Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, the Board of County Commissioners. The current ordinance 9016 gives the BCC, the Board of County Commissioners, that authority to hear these cases.
Well, who will get the authority?
Well, it's the hearings officer. It's somebody who's not elected that the Board of County Commissioners is going to appoint, who knows all the rules and administrative
But they'll
rules
be
and
law
regulations.
enforcement types, right? I mean, they'll have to have lots of training.
No, it just says that they have to know all the administrative rules and everything. So it could be any crony.
Well, right now we have a person that deals with inter-party negotiation, and it's one of the secretarial staff for the Board of County Commissioners, in charge of sitting down with people and working out their differences. And I don't know if she's ever had any training. I mean, nothing against secretarial staff, but she's ever had any training in any of that. But she's in charge of it. So won't this be sort of the way that these people are picked? They'll just say, well, you do it, and, look, here's some regulations to look at. Start next week.
No, you know what? Who knows?
They can't hire people.
Yeah, who knows? It's going to be appointed, and so the electorate doesn't have any really control over that person. It's the Board of County Commissioners.
Trust your government.
Yeah, it's all this administrative rulings that are going to take precedence.
Well, now they say, well, we already have a number. We're not going to be hiring any code enforcement. Wow, we got plenty. Why they don't enforce it, I don't know. That's what this. So how does that relate? I already know the answer. You can tell.
Well, I don't believe it because a couple years ago, they had people that they were going to appoint to write tickets out for the parks. And they said, oh, no, we're not going to hire anybody else. Well, when they approved this in April, one of the agenda items was to hire somebody through a temp agency to go out and issue citations.
But that's not what they said to begin with.
But that's not what they said to begin with. Oh, no, they weren't going to hire more people to do this. They were just going to take, park staff, or, Doreen Ferguson, the park director, or who she appoints. Well, something, this is the problem is
Mission creep.
yeah.
Things expand beyond. Another example of that kind of thing is Cheryl Walker said a number of times, well, no one's going to be coming out and taking pictures of your property without your approval, and they have to only come out on a specific assignment. They can't just go out generally searching for things. The only problem is person after person has come to them at the weekly business sessions, the ones that are televised, and said, no, this is not what's happened. Oh, well, that's just, a story. Yeah, except there was the example of the person who came by and said, well, I'm here to take a look at your kennels to make sure. Okay, that's a good thing, right? Oh, and while the person was there, say, oh, by the way, what's this over here and what's that over there? May I take pictures? And the lady says, no, you can't. As a matter of fact, I'd really rather that you leave because you weren't here to look into that. So this guy goes out onto the road and starts snapping pictures of her place from the road. Now, we tell this to the commissioners, this is where this is going to lead. Oh, no, it'll never, you can give us the power, we'll never use it, we'll never abuse it. They don't have a very good history of sticking by that already.
And that reminds me, I really want to tell everybody.
This is a wanted poster?
No.
Okay.
It's a legal notice. It's a no trespassing sign. You can buy them at Walmart. They don't have to get fancy ones like this, but there are several types of these, and you post them. The county employees are not supposed to come onto your property unless they have a warrant if there's a no trespassing sign on your property.
No, but wait a minute now.
They say to sign them.
Nobody's going to come onto your property, they say, unless they've got all the paperwork in hand. They would never do such a thing. Now, I'm talking with the fellow just yesterday, and he said, yeah, that's what I thought. And they came on my property, and they said, we wanted this and this. And he said, unless you've got a warrant, you have to go. Well, I'll go get one. Okay, then do so. So the guy goes off. He comes back with a deputy sheriff. And they say, okay, now we want, and it was quick. Now we want to come on your property. He says, do you have a warrant? Well, no, we don't have one yet. Get out. They never came back. In a good atmosphere, in a place where people are all friendly and they get along and it's just the right commissioners and everybody in county government is A-okay, you wouldn't need to worry about any of this.
But okay, so that's one thing I want to tell you to be sure is put no trespassing signs on your property.
And sign them. I've heard you have to sign them, and it probably wouldn't hurt to wrap garlic around them or some other to keep vampire. Well, never mind.
And then the other thing that I wanted, before we get too far into the minutia of all this stuff, is people in the county, you have to get out, please, 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 and vote no on all 4 of these ordinances. Because if you don't get out and vote, the people in the city that have vested interests in passing these ordinances, to help the county, I heard somebody say strip mine the property owners for revenue, they will pass. So it's imperative, just like you did in the last levy.
And the one before that.
Yeah, the county people have to get out and vote no. Just get out your no rubber stamp. Follow the advice of Cassanelli. That they accused me of saying no on everything. These 4 ordinances, you have to say no on. Wait a minute. It's measure 1753, 54, 55, and 56.
Now, they weren't going to publish a voter's pamphlet for this. When they first brought it forward, it turns out that during the budget session, and Pat Fahey from Securing Our Safety, the supposed charity, is in charge of, was one of the wheels in SOS. It has the same initials as his company, SOS, Southern Oregon Sanitation. And then they put Pat Fahey on the budget committee. And then they elected Pat Fahey to be the chairman of the budget committee. And then it turns out where there's enough money set aside for a year from now for an election in November.
No, May.
In May, where we're anticipating there'll be a third third May in a row, property tax levy on the ballot. But there's nothing for this election.
Right. They budgeted for the one next May. And next May, I don't think it's going to be a levy. I think it's going to be a taxing district where it is a permanent
taxing district.
It never goes away. So that's
my point is about Pat Fahey and company is that there are some people who feel that you just keep bringing it back again and again and again and again until people say yes, and you just force it down their throat. And if there's not enough money for this election, for a voter's pamphlet, but there will be for the next one, by gosh, it's definitely going to be there. Wait a minute, that kind of stinks. And so we went to the commissioner and he said, what do you mean there's going to not be any voter's pamphlet? Well, it would cost a lot of money to have there should be a voter's pamphlet. We need to explain this. So Cheryl Walker says, well, all the people that come to the meetings, they've all said, all of them have said that they just want the explanation of what the exact wording is of the ordinance. So, because I videotape everything, I went back and I looked at the previous 5 weeks of meetings. And I posted every citizen comment for 5 weeks that they'd been talking about this up to that point. Not a single person, not all of them, not anybody, had said what she said. It was a lie. I mean, sorry, but it was a lie. And this is all that she's hearing. Well, they don't want a voter's pamphlet. Why? Yeah, that's not necessary. So then a number of people came in and said, no, wait a minute, that wasn't truthful. Oh, well, yes, it was. No, it wasn't. So we want explanations of this because we don't understand all these things. Well, if we allow that, she says in a meeting, if we allow that, then people will just be able to put their opinions in there and sort of be like they're buying the election. Wait a minute. When you put opinions in a voter's pamphlet, everybody can put opinions in. Right. It doesn't mean you're buying. It's the way the system works. So you pay a fee. I don't like that very much, but you pay a fee and you put it. And if there are any people in favor of this, they can put in a explanation. Also, I don't like this for the following reason. Okay, I don't want to argue with you about that. And so they can do that. Well, Keith Eck said, even if the people bring in the money, ain't gonna do it. Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. And so Sandi Cassanelli walks in with help from some friends who promised to pay her back. She walks in with $5,400 in $100 bills, holds it up, and says, here's the money. They were shocked. Simon Hare's mouth literally dropped open. They definitely did, and it embarrassed them.
Oh, yeah, there are businessmen in the area who are very opposed to this. The economy's hurting so badly, and the last thing you want to do is put increased, unnecessary burdens on the people that are trying to make a living.
Because the county didn't provide for any kind of documentation, nothing for the citizens to make up their mind about this, only their point of view.
Yeah. And it wasn't right. They were true patriots, and they're the ones that came up with the money to do it. Well, come to find out that that night, the city council also voted that they wanted a voter's pamphlet.
They'd been getting a lot of pressure. They didn't want one. Some of the staff, in fact, a couple of the councilors told me, some of the staff didn't want one because they've got a property tax levy. Sounds familiar.
Right.
Property tax levy for Grants Pass,
their public
safety on the ballot, and they didn't want any voter's pamphlet because people could put in the opposite. Hey, what's wrong with a republic? What's wrong with democracy?
But I think the city councilmen did the right thing, and they said that in an effort to have transparency, they needed a voter's pamphlet.
That was against the advice of some of the city staff. They did not want more. Well, so for me, it's kind of the final killer point. If you've got people who want to put something on there and they say, trust us, we haven't got it all worked out, it already says some things that nobody would ever want on there, we haven't really read it, and we don't want anyone to get the explanatory statements, I mean, we're totally dead set against this, already I'm at a point where I'm going, I'm not voting for that, no matter what it says. Because of the kind of people and the way that they're pursuing this. If they're on the up and up, if they're honest, why would they be doing any of these things?
Well, the thing that I want...
So tell us more reasons.
Yeah, well, the thing that I want to tell you is the whole process has been very, very flawed to begin with. When they filed the ballot titles include captions, questions, and the summary.
Now, a title, just so that you know, I think of a title as being like 3 or 4 words. No, in legal talk, a ballot title can be a few paragraphs. Go figure. Go ahead.
The ballot titles contain the caption, the question, and a brief summary. And what they did is the district attorney wrote up these ballot titles and submitted them to the clerk May 1st.
No, okay, I'm sorry. I know you want to go through the timeline, but I got a little problem with this already. This was going to be passed by the Board of County Commissioners, and they held it back because they heard that the citizens had banded together and decided they want this on the ballot. It wasn't going to be on the ballot. It was not going to be, the commissioners were going to make up their mind without any public input. And then people got more than 1,000 signatures to force it to the ballot. So I would think that that's now my ballot measure, because I signed that too, and I should get to write up what it says in the voter's pamphlet if there was going to be one. But that's not the way the system works here. The government gets to write up the explanation for the thing that we force to the ballot. Why do they get... Right. That just doesn't make any sense to me why they get to write it. Mm-hmm. So did we have input on what they wrote?
That was just the process.
Did we have input on what they wrote?
I don't know. The thing is this was all done. We had a May election to determine whether we wanted a levy for public safety. All this stuff with these ordinances happened before that May election, and everybody was so busy fighting the levy that this all was slipped through. The commissioners voted on it April 17th. While we're in the midst of preparing for this May levy. So what happened is the district attorney wrote up these ballot titles and submitted them to the clerk on May 1st. The problem is the clerk only notified one authorized agent. He didn't notify both authorized agents.
No, he didn't notify not the authorized agents. He didn't notify. By law, it says that he must tell the chief petitioners.
It said the law says chief petitioner.
And there were 2 chief petitioners. Okay. And a person that is designated as he was secretary for their group or something. And the law says the county clerk must notify the chief petitioners. Now, I talked with both chief petitioners. They weren't notified.
What the state said was the clerk could notify the authorized agent, and he did do that. They were submitted on Wednesday, May 1st. The DA submitted to the clerk, and then the clerk the next day called one of the authorized agents. He didn't notify both of them. There was 2 authorized agents.
No, sorry.
Yes, there was.
No, there were 2 authorized agents. One of them didn't even know he was an authorized agent.
That's correct.
They did it without even talking to him.
That's
So we got 2 sets of people. Lead chief petitioners, which you're supposed to notify according to the law, and then helpers.
Authorized
agents. One of them didn't even know he was an authorized agent.
That's correct.
So he calls one of the authorized agents and he tells them some details.
You can pick them up, the ballot titles.
Why wouldn't you just tell everybody?
He didn't. And let me explain this,
okay?
So he calls up one authorized agent the next day, and it says you can come pick up the ballot titles. He didn't bother to notify the other 2 chief petitioners or the other authorized agent. So that person did not go and pick the ballot titles up. He waited.
That was Jack Swift.
Well, whatever.
It was Jack.
And so the thing is the law says that they were supposed to post these in the next available newspaper.
That would be the government supposed to post them in the next available newspaper.
That's right. they didn't come out until the Sunday Courier. And nobody knew that they were in the Courier.
Even the commissioners didn't know, and they said, but we check the Courier, we look at it. They didn't know. We have it on tape. They said, well, you didn't even tell us.
Two of them said that they were looking for it and they missed it. And so the authorized agent had either picked him up or had somebody else pick him up later on that the following week. Now, it's important because we only had 10 days in order to
protest the goofy write-up?
Yeah, to protest the goofy write-up. And what the problem is if you take 1753, the write-up for the DA, you don't know which ordinance is being repealed and which ordinance is being adopted. It just says a yes vote will repeal the solid waste and nuisance abatement ordinance and adopt a new Josephine County solid waste and nuisance abatement ordinance. It doesn't tell you that even though the commissioners passed these 4 ordinances on April 17th, they don't tell you that it was stayed. Those ordinances were stayed. They were
held back,
not in effect, and that the current ordinance is still that 9016, that one way back that was passed in 1990. So what this measure should say, a yes vote will repeal the current solid waste ordinance, which is 1990, and it will adopt the new ordinance 2013-002.
Well, why not just make it clear?
Yes, they couldn't. And I complained about this, and they said there's absolutely nothing that can be done. The challenge period was 10 days, and nothing could be done.
Well, we didn't even know when the challenge period started.
Well, that's true, but there, on another one of these ballots...
Time has run out, didn't you know?
Yeah.
No.
The state said, sorry, there's nothing you can do. Now, there's another ballot title that was written up by the district attorney that is wrong. It's 2013-004. It's measure 1755. It's for the hearings officer ordinance, and they screwed up, because it says a yes vote will adopt the Josephine County Code enforcement officer. So we'll see if they get to change this and not to change the first one.
We didn't get to change anything. They get to change things?
Yeah, well, see, this is it. We're going to see. And so they screwed up on this one. We'll see if the state gives the county a pass and says, oh, no, we can change 1755 because it's a screw-up, but because 1753 is written so poorly, no, we're not going to allow it.
You know, there's 4 of these things, and she's telling you all about them, and there's numbers to keep track of and everything. It's just easier just to say no across the board on all 4 of these. Mm-hmm. They weren't thought through very well. Sandy brought to them some information the other day that they could have incorporated into the new one. She says, look, I found these problems. They even said to her, I've never seen them do this before. Well, before you leave, can we have your notes? Really? Yeah. But then the next day, all they did is just sort of tear them apart. Oh, well, there's really nothing. You know, see, there's always just really nothing. Wouldn't it be just a lot simpler to say no and start over again with people who actually read what they're not catching really important, not the little tiny, is it the code, is it this, is it, but major things that are badly written. For example, what is a farm? You would think that you know what is a farm. There's a question about what is a farm.
Yeah, well, they changed the ordinance to remedy
but
that.
The first time it was written, it just said, well, this applies to farms. Well, now wait a minute. What is a farm? Is a farm a place where you're raising animals? It's obviously a farm. Is a farm a place where you're raising crops? Obviously a farm. But what if you live in exclusive farmland, but you don't do any farming? Is that a farm?
Well, they didn't change the ordinance. They changed the explanatory statement in the Borders pamphlet. It says this ordinance does not apply to farm operations.
Farm operations.
Yeah.
So if I live on exclusive farmland, I'm not saying you need to have all the answers, although she's doing pretty good. If I live in exclusive farmland and I have a backyard little garden where I raise some vegetables just for my own use, well, I'm going to eat them. What other use would I have? Now, then these ordinances apply to me because I'm running a farm. I'm on farmland. Is that a farm?
I don't know.
Well,
it says this ordinance does not apply to farms. And
what's a farm?
Yeah.
We know what a farm is, but what isn't a farm?
Yeah.
It's just they didn't think it through. Is my point.
Well, we could go to the ordinance and find out, what that says.
And you can go to the ordinance too.
Yeah.
You can now. You will be able to, through the voters pamphlet, finally be able to see these things.
Yeah.
But because we know for certain. I'm going to repeat this one part. I never repeat things, but I'm going to repeat this. When they had the part in there about the money was going to go to the department that wrote the fine, that proves, because it was embarrassing to them, it proves that they didn't read these things. So why would we give them the power for something they haven't even read that's embarrassing to them and to everybody else? I don't want those kinds of laws on the books. And just because these are new, is new always better? Really?
In this case, I don't think it is. And I did have some major complaints. They just submitted the explanatory statements for the voters pamphlet. And I asked them, they had plenty of room. First of all, they say that it's written up, and it says that any person may appeal the notice by, this is for solid waste, may appeal the notice by filing at the office of the public health director a written appeal. But if you go to the ordinance, it says, oh yeah, it is the public health director, so I guess they did have it right. Sorry.
They changed that. But
no,
what?
No, I don't know. Yeah, no, see, they had it in the explanatory, that was what it's how it's written in the ordinance, that it is the public health director, but in the explanatory statement for 1753, they have, the property owner may appeal the notice to a hearings officer. That's not right, and they didn't change it. And that's one thing, and then they had plenty of room. I wanted, on the solid waste ordinance, for them to put in, the Board of County Commissioner may order the cost of the abatement be made a personal obligation on the property owner or the person causing the nuisance, or may be a special assessment and lien against the property involved, or both. That's in the ordinance, and they did not include that. That is a major point to me, that they can put a lien on your property. They can come after you personally if the county has to clean up anything. And to me, that is a fundamental explanation about the effect of this ordinance. And according to the ORS statute, ORS 251.345, it says the governing body that has referred a measure to the voters shall submit an impartial, simple, and understandable statement explaining the measure and its effect.
Oh, brother, they failed on that from the get-go.
Yeah, that is a major, major point, and they're not putting it in the explanatory statement.
Okay, so let me ask you a question about this. If somebody's goofing up on their property, or they're renting it to someone who's not doing the right thing, you would want to have some, I know already that we have an ordinance that's already in effect that holds that person's feet to the fire and says, hey, you're going to need to clean this up. So this new, improved ordinance, it does what? We still want that in effect, right?
Well, it is in effect in 9016.
In the one that's the original one, the one we have now.
The one we have now, that was passed in 1990.
Right.
There's a whole process. If people, they get noticed, and if they don't follow through, there's a whole process, that you go before the Board of County Commissioners. I think the fine is $500. When I was in office, there was a lot of people who could not afford that $500 surcharge, and as long as they were cleaning up the place or had made a substantial effort to clean up the place, a lot of times the Board of County Commissioners, because they could, a lot of these people were on fixed incomes, on disability and stuff,
They're having a little heart
Yeah.
would be the point of electing somebody instead of just being ruled by rule book.
Yeah. So a lot of times we cut that fine in half to like $250. But the new ordinances, they can fine you ongoing things up to $10,000
Okay,
and a year in jail.
No.
They have jail time.
That's nice.
That's a
Well, there's a
possibility.
good reason to vote for this.
No, vote no, vote no, vote no, vote no.
Rolling back to where this started, I was there when the commissioners said, we really got to do something about this because we've got 300 outstanding things from the last 3 years that haven't been taken care of. And my gosh, this is an emergency situation. I'm not exaggerating, and this needs to be done. So a citizen or two decided, okay, look, we want to look at that because we don't always trust what county government says. What a surprise. And so they had to pay, this is nice, $500 to look at just 1 year. I talked with legal counsel after this, the legal counsel's office. I said, why didn't you look at all 3 years? Because it's expensive.
It is.
You have to pay. As Simon Hare said to me one time, it's going to cost you a lot of money to keep track of what we're doing.
Yeah.
He really did say that.
I think it was Jack Swift that...
Or Jack acting on behalf of somebody else.
Yeah,
right.
but
Okay,
they were the ones, and they found out only 2 people.
Yeah, well, they got the numbers together, and I read it because nobody else would get up and read this thing. And I said, here's what we found out. Here's what this group found out. Here's what we're sharing. And it turns out, after you add it all together, there aren't 300. If you take the 1 year, then that should mean that there would be about 100. And there were about 90, so that's about right. The math on that's right. And then when you look at the numbers, and you say, well, how many of these are legitimate things that are based on this ordinance? Well, there was a child endangerment. That doesn't match with this. And when you went through all the numbers, it turned out, for that year, there were 2. Not 100, 2. So when you add it all up, they were exaggerating this problem by 4,400%. And you might vote for people who would do that to you just to pass this thing. As I said again, I think it's easier if they just pass a law that only applies to Cheryl Walker's neighbor and get this over with.
Well,
I don't want to change the ordinances based on a lie. It started with a lie.
Yeah, well, and
not going to find that in the Daily Courier. Sorry.
Okay, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, that's unusual. Also, who can complain? Well, the way it's supposed... going through these complaints, you're supposed to have, at the current time, you're supposed to have a minimum of 3 people.
3 people. And then, within a half a mile of the violation.
Okay, now get this. Now it's down to just one person, and that person doesn't even need to live here anymore. Going to vote on this now? They don't even need to live here. They could live in Bolivia. It wouldn't matter. One person, right? I mean, that's the way we're reading it. Why don't we know more about this? How come we're having to sort of catch up with what the county is doing? I get people ask me that. They say, well, I go to the weekly business session and I listen to this stuff and I really don't understand enough. Wait a minute. It's not your fault. See, you're not paid to explain it to the people. Well, neither are we. But it's their job. They're highly paid. What is it? $85,000 plus benefits? That's a lot of money. And legal counsel, who wrote these things up, $100,000?
75 for commission.
Okay, all right. So
95 for the CFO.
So the point is that it's their job. If you don't understand it, there's a reason that you don't understand it, because it's to someone's benefit, just like the voter's pamphlet, if you don't understand it. I think you should vote no just because of that.
And I want to go through the other explanatory statements for these measures. The one that deals with the code enforcement officers, I wanted them to put, this ordinance allows the Board of County Commissioners to appoint persons as code enforcement officers, but they don't tell you. I wanted them to add animal control officers because the ordinance allows animal control officers to be code enforcement officers with the same authority that a code enforcement officer would have.
Well, this is a bit like the lady where they came by to look at her kennel, and while the guy was there, he wanted to take pictures of other things that were improper that had nothing to do with her kennel, and she told him to get out.
And then also, when they talk about the citations, it says this ordinance allows the code enforcement officer to issue citations for violations of county ordinances. I think they should add, this ordinance allows the code enforcement or law enforcement officer, because that's how it's stated in the ordinance. So we can have law enforcement officers going out and citing violations according to the ordinance.
They talked about that in the review meeting of her notes, and they said, well, really, I mean, that information is available elsewhere, and we really don't need to, I mean, how much hand-holding, I'm paraphrasing, how much hand-holding are we going to do for the voters? I mean, they should be informed about this.
Yeah, well, there was plenty of room for them to put it on there. And then the most egregious part is, I believe, when they talk about the trial or the hearing, it says, the new revised version says, let's see if I can find it here.
She's done the homework for you.
Yeah. It says, if a person requests a trial or hearing, then the court or hearings officer sets the time and date for the trial or hearing. Well, you know something? If you go to the ordinance, they have a section there, on page 9, section 14, that says that the court and the hearings officer has the discretion to set a trial even if you don't request one. So I asked them, whether to say whether or not the person requests a trial or hearing, the court or hearings officer sets the date and time.
They did not want to put that in there. They did not want to put that in there.
Yeah. So theoretically, whether you request a hearing or a trial or not, they can say, hey, look, this is so bad, here's your little summons to court or, before this hearings officer. And if you don't show up, they can issue a judgment against you.
Now, look, you're probably not going to vote for this, but you need to vote because sometimes when things look this bad, people say, oh, nobody would vote for that. And then they don't vote. You really do need to vote, whether you're for this or against. I don't know how you can listen to this and be for it, but you need to vote no on this because otherwise this will pass through. And what's the effect of saying no on this? Well, it's not going to slow down Cheryl Walker. I mean, she was saying even before the last levy was defeated that she was looking forward to the next levy. It's probably not going to slow down Simon Hare very much because while we were defeating the last levy, he was talking in a private, well, not a private meeting, I was there, but there were only 3 of us in the room, and I'm videotaping it. He was starting to talk about another kind of bond levy, and Keith Heck says to him, oh, well, let's not talk about that now until this election, so we don't need to talk about that here. It was plain. I'm there sitting there with the camera, and they're already talking about another levy before the last one even is defeated. What we need to do on these is not always say no. I'm not suggesting that we always say no. I voted for some of these things in the past. But the reason I'm suggesting not now is because this wasn't well thought out. They don't even have some of these answers. They're wanting to pass things, well, we'll never use that authority. You need to say no on this. You need to vote on this November election, even if you are not voting for president or against president. You need to do so that we can put a lid on that. And we need to be code enforcement officers over county government because we're watching them and saying, no, you don't get a chance to do that.
It's pretty bad, it really is. The explanatory statements for the 3rd and 4th one for the environmental health enforcement ordinance and the one before that, 1755. It says currently if a person violates a state law involving one of the environmental health programs, then the county, they had must, but they changed it to may file a civil lawsuit in circuit court against the alleged violators. There's already laws in place for us to do that
For us?
For the county.
Okay.
What this gives the authority to the county is to enforce state administrative law as county ordinances, and it's over like restaurants, bed and breakfasts, pool facilities, tourist facilities.
Well, I want them to have some kind of capability of making sure that we're safe with those things.
But they already have that. It's already state law. And what this reminds me of is like during World War II, I hate to say it, but the Nazis used to take Jewish thugs, gang members, and they would make them capos over the rest of the Jewish population. And the Nazis would actually get somebody else to enforce their rules and regulations. And this last ordinance, 1756, does the same thing. It allows Josephine County employees and government to be the capos for the state requirements. This, to me, is very, very wrong.
Okay, so it fits in with the general plan that I've heard of, and I've videotaped for you, so you can take a look at it too, about animals and about how they're dealt with. The commissioners had been talking a couple of months ago about how they need to reach out to veterinarians in the area and convince them to get people to license their pets and get them vaccinated. Well, of course they should get them vaccinated, but also to get them licensed. And the reason to license them is according to the commissioners, was to ease the burden on those who were paying for the licenses. Regardless of what you think about that, what they said is, well, if we make it give a financial incentive to the veterinarians to turn in names, I'm not making this up, of the people who don't do it, why then we'll all benefit. And I'm thinking the same thing that you are. I'm reluctant to go back to Nazi Germany, but I'm thinking, just turn in your neighbors. That's going to make the veterinarians very popular. Why do I bring this up? Is it part of these ordinances? Well, I don't think so, although it may end up being. The point is, they're already willing to pay. How do they pay? Where does that money come from? They're willing to pay veterinarians to turn you in because you haven't done according to what the county thinks that you need to do. Hey, don't make them into informers. This is where I'm not totally against government, but when I hear them saying those kinds of things, they go, yeah, that really sounds like a good plan. No, it sounds like a terrible plan. What are you thinking? And this time we have 3 of them who are total sync on this kind of thing, and now every time they say something, I think, boy, it might be something like that rule that they'd like to come up with. This is coming down the road. You need to say no, and we need to say no every time they come to a fork in the road and say, we're not going to allow you to do that. We don't trust your judgment in this.
Yeah, the solid waste, and nuisance abatement ordinance. I just want to reiterate, if you're called upon, it says any such person who fails to comply with an order of the hearings officer is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor and may be punished by no more than 1 year in jail and a fine of no more than $2,500.
So this code enforcement officer who's picked by the commissioner, the hearing officer is picked by the commissioners,
to hear the cases.
And doesn't necessarily need any formal training because they haven't spelled this out.
Right.
Can give you a citation, can say that you're doing something wrong, and if you don't do what that person says.
No. The code enforcement gives the citations. The hearings officer hears the case.
Okay. All
so
right.
if you don't do if you go through this whole process and you have a case before the hearings officer and the hearings officer says you will clean up that space in the next, I don't know, whatever amount of time, and you don't do it, they can not only go after you for the cost of the cleanup,
A lien on your property.
Or personally, they can come after you that. But it says any such person who fails to comply with an order of the hearings officer is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor or may be punished by no more than 1 year in jail and a fine of no more than $2,500.
I still think it would be easier if you just gave Cheryl Walker a flashlight and a badge and says, "Go to your neighbor and get this over with." This is ridiculous that we're going through all these things where everyone's going to suffer because she's got a pet peeve against her neighbor. She's mentioned it 2 or 3 times in meetings. Oh, this is terrible.
It was a classic example, she said.
And so now it's no fun being a commissioner unless you can use your weight against your neighbor, right?
These are not good.
And where is the problem? Remember, they said, "Oh, we got 300 problems." No, they didn't. It wasn't just an exaggeration. You don't exaggerate something by 4,400%. It was a lie. And have they ever answered that question? Have they ever said, "Oh, no, I went to legal counsel. I said, what's up with this?" They had no answer either. Hey, wait a minute. I've challenged you in public twice. We made videos about it. Where's their response? They don't have a response.
Right.
It's based on a lie. I'm not going to vote for people who base something on a lie.
They want this, and it's, in my opinion, it's mostly for generation of revenue.
They swear it's not. Oh, it's not going to be generation of revenue.
Even a lot of you go to all the, I was told, all the junk places, scrap yards where you could go and bring your stuff. They say because the price of recycled material was so high that everybody's been cleaning up their places and submitting their metal and everything to the recycle places. So it is disconcerting to have a long-standing ordinance, 9016, that is serving Josephine County well. I don't see why it should be overturned to have these very, very draconian administrative processes in place so that basically the county can come after you more conveniently.
Well, it has to be done because we've got oh, no, we don't. That was a lie.
Yeah, we don't have 300 outstanding cases.
We've got about 6. Well, at least we had 2 for 1 year, and so if you multiply that times 3, that's 6. We've got a half a dozen. So other boards have looked at changing these ordinances, and they said, no, it was really not necessary. This board thinks it's totally necessary, and it's based on something that wasn't true at all. I find that a lot of the things that they say, this group, not every group, not all of government, but a lot of the things they say is based on falsehoods.
And almost every single...
I don't want to believe that.
A lot of the boards since 1990 who have been in place since 1990, County Legal Counsel has presented these ordinances to them, and all of them in the past have voted against this. No, we don't want to become judge, jury, and executioner, for these ordinances. And they had 2 green commissioners vote on this. In my opinion, they shouldn't have.
Well, they obviously didn't read through this stuff, because if you're getting up at a meeting after 2 weeks of real intensive study of this and telling them things that they've never seen, including a complete staff of legal people who didn't find any of these things, not just little things, but things that are totally wrong.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I just really.
You did it.
Yeah, I just really think you really have to vote no on these, and there's a whole variety of reasons. There are reasons that we probably haven't even discussed in this one.
Isn't it enough what we've already said?
Yeah.
And look, we've got to get ready for the next thing that's coming up, which is a permanent multi-tier taxing district.
Yeah, that's how they were presenting it.
Permanent.
I don't think it's just going to be a levy in May. They want permanent funding, and in this day and age, is I say, enslave the electorate, or the people of Josephine County, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. That's really not appropriate. It's really not right.
Sorry that you've got to vote on something again. I mean, really, you need to vote. But the reason that the levy keeps, or those kinds of things keep coming back every year, is that this will be the third May in a row that this thing's come back. And there are people in this area who are absolutely convinced if they just explain it a little bit better, that you'll come to your senses, and this time you're going to march in the streets and vote for this altogether. Get with the program, says Simon Hare. Hey, you know what? He's in charge of a program I just don't agree with.
Yeah, and you can't promote this stuff into passing. I don't care how much propaganda you put out. Oh, it's just like the last levy, the Courier and KJO and everybody.
Oh, they pulled out all the stops. Yeah. The DA was going door to door. I'm so busy I can't get my work done, but I got time to go door to door. Hey!
But what they were saying is they were skewing the news to say there was all this rampant crime that had increased by, an ungodly percentage. Well, the state just came out with their figures, the crime statistics, and actually the crime in Josephine County has decreased.
So we got one source saying that there's been 50 auto thefts. And we've got another source saying, no, there's 1,400 auto thefts. Hey, wait a minute. 9% of the homes in Josephine County have been burglarized. 9%? Almost 10% of the homes have been burglarized? Wait a minute, there's something just not right about that statistic.
Yeah. So,
is it trying to scare us into doing things? I don't like that. I don't mind it when somebody has a different point of view. Just don't lie to me. Because then I don't trust that person anymore.
It's mostly campaign rhetoric, and it's not dealing with the facts about what's actually happening. So I predict that they are going to do the same thing with these ordinances, and coming out and saying how horrible it is that we don't have a way to deal with these cases.
With the cases that don't exist. Okay, so bottom line on this is, whether any of this made any sense or not, I think you made sense, unusually. And that being the case, do you believe the government telling you things? I know how some of you feel about that. Do you believe the citizens telling you things? And there's people who say, well, how can you do it? You're not highly paid. The big question is, who was it that's trying to give you the information and wants a voter's pamphlet? And who is it that was trying to hold back the information and doesn't want to give you a voter's pamphlet? Doesn't that just tell you?